Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining LAForward7 at this unique event. So, we're 7 weeks into working from home. How's everyone feeling? Is the virtual world exhausting you? Well, this is not your typical Zoom call, and let's see where architecture and design can go. Join us in this immersive virtual panel moderated by our very own Yan Krymsky, along with our guests Kathleen Cohen and Björn Myreze. Yan, handing the mic to you.
Hey, everybody. So excited to be with you guys over lunch today and doing this really unique experiment. And I want to emphasize experiment. This is probably the first time that a virtual set has been combined with streaming content in an interactive panel format. At least that's what I'm being told. So it's going to go perfect. And the other thing I want to mention is that we do have a 30-second delay, and that we'd like you to continue to ask questions and chat, and we'll pick those up and try to mix them into the conversation we're going to have here kind of in real time, and then we'll have a little bit more conversation at the end. So without further ado, really excited to be here with panelist Kathleen Cohen. She's an immersive and experienced strategist that runs the Collaboratorium, and also Björn Myreze, who's live from Bergen. We're streaming this from Norway. He's an interactive content producer, creative director, and founder of MYREZE, which is an award-winning broadcast company. Now, before I pass it over to Kathleen, I just want to ask you this. Take stock of where you're at right now. What are you doing? You're probably multitasking, and that's a little bit different than what you might have been doing if you were going to a Forward7 event pre-pandemic, where you'd have to commit to being there and kind of being there in person and maybe check your phone a little bit, but you'd have to be sneaky about it. Whereas now you're probably doing things on, in multiple places. And so this is just an example of how we start to deal with all of this new technology, the kind of new space that we're all in. And so we're gonna dive into that in a moment. But Kathleen is gonna talk a little bit about herself and remind us all who she is, because she's been in our office before, right, Kathleen?
Yeah, it's so good. Well, not to see everybody, because this is me talking to myself, but I'm going to trust that there's an audience out there. And when we really conflate these worlds, we'll be able to see each other in real time beyond the Brady Bunch screen, Jan, that you're referring to. So thank you. Thank you, LAForward7. Thank you, David Sheldon, originally, to have introduced me to Perkins Will and to your offices. And I had there was a great lunch and learn less than a year ago that we talked about AR, VR, MR, XR, RR, all the Rs. And everybody, I think, felt a little bit like, wow, is the rest of the world actually doing all of this? And how do we close that gap? So I'm back based on Norah's invite to help close that gap and actually even extend the milepost even further. So I think this will be really inspirational. I chatted with Norah and the LAForward7 team about different folks that I work with, people who inspire me. MYREZE out of Norway, Bjorn and his team certainly are at the top of the list of inspiration. A little bit about me. I created a journey map about myself just to share with you. And of course, you may get this in 20 seconds or less. But on my journey map, just to understand how I have come and arrived in this space, was that I was a happy classical antiquity painter, actually using frescoes coming out of art school. And then I went into grad school focusing on industrial design, thinking I was going to be a glass architect. And I was very happy. I was thinking about working with Dan Daly. My life was going to be in the architecture community. And I got a call from a friend who said, you got to get on the box in 1994. And I had no idea what getting on the box meant, actually. So on this journey map, you can see the left side, if you follow it like a clock, animation right dead in the middle is 1994, me doing I was just a glass blower. Now I'm on Silicon Graphics SGI, learning to send rockets into space that render over 24 hours, maybe 48 hours to get a tiny rocket into space. From that point to the rest of this map has been, this is aging me, 26 years. So I did the industry. I worked for DreamWorks Interactive. We were the first team world building, creating the game Medal of Honor. And then went to IBM Innovation and worked in Fortune 100, and then moved to Disney to help launch DisneyWorld.com and be the beginning of the team that created the wearable device, the Magic Band, where I left and created my own consultancy, which is the Turquoise Circle. From that point to today, I have been a digital strategist, a big data girl. I've worked on Capitol Hill, trying to tell the contemporary story of the US Constitution, but more importantly, came back to LA to focus on AR and VR, knowing that from 2012 to today, in the last 8 years, this landscape of world building in VR asks the same questions that we asked back at DreamWorks in 1996. So from this point, I have learned a lot about what this new mirror world, metaverse, magicverse, there's so many words to what this new world building is beginning to look like. Spatial layer computing, digital twinning, all of that is sort of the world I play in as a consultant with different verticals, different industries, and architecture, of course, is one that I'm heavily interested in. And mostly because I keep saying the architecture world has questions that you ask urban planning and design that gamers who are building these worlds typically don't. So we're going to look at this through the lens of real-time broadcast and through Björn's creative view, which is also not gaming. And he has a very adamant approach and opinion about it as well. So my world today focuses twofold on the metaverse and digital twins, who we are as the people in this space. One next slide I want to show you before we move on is a timeline slide. So I call myself an experienced strategist. I'm also sometimes looking at how do you architect your likeness, your person in this metaverse. So right now you're looking at me through a screen. Who owns that likeness? Do I think I own this likeness of myself as I'm talking to you? If I create an avatar, who's responsible and who's accountable to the persona that I'm creating in this metaverse? And the same thing goes for the actual architected spaces you create as well. So on this timeline, I put this together for a talk that I've been giving called Meet Your Digital Twin. And I start this timeline in 2008. Prior to 2008, it was the interactive era. Everybody had an interactive shop in Hollywood, trying to make things interactive from CDs, DVDs, trying to make music videos interactive. But I'm going to drop in at the recession. Coming out of the recession in 2008 was the integrated media era. That's when we had social, mobile, apps. And from that point to today, we're in the red dot. We're straddling both the social mobile moment as well as this immersive moment. And in this moment, everybody's trying to get an ROI and money around what productizes this world. Before we could even figure this out and do really well in this space, we're asked to immerse ourselves in AR, VR, MR, XR, and industries aren't necessarily ready for it. And we haven't even gotten into this fully adopted before the white box. We're now being asked to think about autonomous vehicles and robotics and blockchain and 3D printing and all these other disruptive technologies. So this timeline from the blue boxes to the white boxes to the green is 25 years of development right now. The red dotted line at the bottom of the screen is basically, we're in the developer years, all trying to figure out how to get to what we're calling the singularity. Not everybody agrees around the word, the singularity, but at this point in 2045, everything will be dynamic. Everything will be smart. We'll have a blend between our physical world and our virtual world. So that's why I'm putting this milepost way out there and saying between now and 2045, what is our responsibility? And I will say this, you don't have to go into Ready Player One in the metaverse. You can go into the space travel part. You can go jump aboard all the techno-philanthropists in Silicon Valley and you can go chase colonizing a planet. That's another option. So we're talking about the metaverse here for this conversation. And I will say that COVID has probably been the single biggest PR campaign to force people into understanding how important this is. So with that, thank you everybody for your time. And this is going to be super fun. And I invite you to walk into the metaverse with us. It's going to be a fun ride.
A good story immerses the audience into a new world, leaving impacts and emotions. MYREZE merges creative thinking and new technologies to communicate innovation, forming new expressions. We inspire the audience. We are the future of storytelling.
Hey, beautiful people. I'm really, really excited about this. We are now here in Norway, Bergen, which is the most rainy city in the world. And that's probably why I really enjoy being in a virtual set. This is in a small office in Norway, in the smallest green screen on the planet, and we are doing something today that is never done before. And the fun fact about that is a lot of people are talking about having virtual conferences today, but you are not really having that, because this is in a virtual environment where I can bring in my beautiful friends. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Fist bump. Woo!
I keep getting it wrong. Which side?
I'm guessing this side.
I think it's this side. Oh, wait. I think I remember. It was like right under here.
You got it. You got it. You got it.
All right. Well, we're hanging out. You know, we've been hanging out in this space all morning, Kathleen and Bjorn and I. You know, if we were doing this in a more rehearsed setting, I would be standing where Bjorn is and moderating the conversation. But given, you know, the limitations that we have and that this is an experiment, we're going to do it a little bit different. And I'm going to moderate from the monitor now on your screen left. So let's kick off the conversation. I think that we're going to kind of talk about this in two parts. First is the kind of new normal that we're all experiencing, which is, I call it life in Flatland. You know, basically, we're all interacting in a two-dimensional plane. And then the next part of it is looking at the future that Kathleen has kind of laid out for us, and what does it look like in 2045. Kathleen, without gear, right now, most of us are struggling to translate a lot of what we used to do in 3D life in the 2D plane of the computer. What's missing in Flatland? And what are some of the things that we used to do and take for granted that have become really difficult?
Yeah. You know, since COVID, you could imagine my phone's been ringing off the hook. And everybody wants the solution. I even posted on LinkedIn the solution for conferences, the solution for work, remote work, the solution for social XR, the solution for academics. They're all very different solutions. But the common thread in all of them is serendipitous human interactions. And when you think about this, how do you recreate those serendipitous human interactions that we just take for granted? If we're going to a conference and we're walking down a hall and we come up against, you know, we come up to a group of friends who have friends that we're now just meeting for the first time, how do you recreate that in a very 2D linear web conference format? I joked and said we should all throw our names into a randomizer in a random room, that everybody opens up their Zoom rooms like their house, and you can just drop into any Zoom room and start meeting people so you can have these serendipitous human interactions. But whether it's in virtual reality or whether it's in this space, which is still within a 2D screen, trying to optimize that, trying to solution that, you know, is as much crowdsourcing. There's such creativity going on within COVID that it's showing us, here's the ways to have those serendipitous human interactions. So to me, that's the first thing that jumps out. Bjorn, I don't know if you have an opinion about that as well.
No, I totally agree. And just the fact that we are talking here today is quite unique, and it is kind of based on the strange time we are dealing with right now. A broadcast company talking with you, Kathleen, and architectural company, which it is quite something. And I think a lot of new combinations can really come out of this.
Yeah. I love Bjorn, the background of Perkins of Will that you have up on the screen.
Of course.
Yan,
yeah, we appreciate that. We definitely appreciate that. So Bjorn, we are in this what appears to be a 3D environment. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the difference between that as a backdrop versus a traditional backdrop versus what we're used to seeing in the broadcast world, where we see more static backdrops. Just tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, we could definitely see Kathleen here using the traditional Zoom backdrop, which is cutting her out in a really horrible way. The main difference there is that we are combining the game engine from Unreal, Epic Games Unreal, where we can now connect that with cameras, and that means whenever they move the camera now, you see that it's synchronized with the background. So I'm actually in this environment. When I move around, you see the shadows, you will see reflections, and I can actually now, if I do it right, I can go behind those lamps there. But yeah, I didn't practice on that one. But it's truly immersive, and for me, standing here right now, compared to you guys, because I've had a lot of meetings like you are in right now, sitting from home, yeah, here you see some smoke from the background there, and maybe some strange things would happen later in this talk, but it's really the feeling now for me being here. I feel that I'm in a physical room, because I have the screens in front of me, so I can see me, I can see you guys, I can move around, I can actually fist bump you or corona bump you here right now. And now I'm actually behind the lamps, and I can go in front of the lamps. So there is a huge difference between what you can do on your Zoom side, Kathleen, compared to what we can do here. And also the fact that, when we use this on a regular basis, we are creating extended spaces within the broadcast industry for news, sports, weather. You might have seen a lot of crazy stuff happening on the Weather Channel the last couple of years.
So tell us a little bit about the space that we're in right now. We were talking before this about the set that we're actually standing in. It was used for a comedy show, right?
Yeah, the funny thing is that normally we would probably have created your universe for this broadcast or this conference, but we didn't have any time, so we actually borrowed the first ever comedy show, which was aired here the other day, which gave, it's kind of strange that suddenly a comedy show can be aired in a virtual environment, because what happened there is they use it in a totally different way, and they can do like improvisation based on the graphics happening in the background. We can change the environment, and everything can be animated, of course. So it is an additional extension of real life in a really intriguing way.
Excellent. Kathleen, we're talking about interacting in the 3D space, people watching a comedy show in a 3D space. Obviously, we have a need to gather. We desperately need that human communication. So what are some of the things that people are doing right now to interact in virtual spaces? We've heard about virtual conferences, virtual concerts, and how are those being handled currently, and how might they be handled better in the future?
Well, there's no doubt right now that real-time conferencing is the phrase du jour, because people are trying to replicate, and we hope that the networks support us. There's a lot of thoughts around bringing HD down to SD so the entire network can support just this integration. So, real-time broadcast and the advancements of that, it's almost a clash of titans we were talking about earlier. Whether you had mentioned esports, massive multiplayer online in the gaming world, where the architecture, engineering, and construction industry has been advancing, utilizing VR, where the film visual effects world has been using previs, pitch viz, post viz and virtual production and virtual sets in order to limit, insurance on the actors, the cost of sets, being able to design on a dime, be able to have flexibility. It's sort of a clash of titans. I will say something really interesting about this, and I am going to call out Wolves on the Walls, a particular VR game. Pete Billington and Ed Saatchi and Wolves on the Walls did something really phenomenal, which is they looked at character development in film, looked at character development in gaming, and they said there has to be another element in order for us to really make this real. And they went to immersive theater. And immersive theater is what broke that fourth wall down for them in order for them to really engage with a character who can see you. So while you have gear on, or whether you're in the space and a character can see you and know you and start having a relationship with you, is really an advancement in how we begin to use these spaces and think about these spaces. So it's coming at us from every angle. From the gaming world, it might be reward-based. From the VFX world, it might be quality-based. From the architecture world, this is where I keep asking, there are questions in urban design and planning that I want to see infiltrate this spatial layer of computing as we begin to digitize our real world. So we're in this Clash of Titans moment, and I certainly recognize being tapped the humanist in this. Recently, I joined a board that was part of the Audi Innovation Lab, and they have tech, and they have it's called HoloRide, and they have tech, and they have VR, and they have entertainment. And the one thing that was really missing was the human part, not just the ethics, but the human part of all of this. So I'm beginning to see, after 25 years of being in creating product, that there's a human element, and it's the soft skills that are now rising to the top. And whether the artists are getting us out of COVID right now or not, it's the soft skills that we're focusing on, not just all the computational thinking.
Absolutely. I want to get back to that too a little bit later when we talk about the role of architects in this future, and how we start to evolve as a profession. But before we stop talking about this moment, I do want to talk a little bit more about our backdrops and the virtual set that we're in. I mean, one of the things that I've become so aware of is that we are all now curating what's behind us. It is actually part of our outfit, right? It's like, it's like the same choices I make about what I'm going to wear to work. I'm going to make those same choices about my backdrop. The story I was telling you guys earlier about, a lot of us were on a call yesterday, a big consultant call, and one of our engineers was taking the call from, it looked like his little boys or little girls' room, and there was a stuffed animal walrus that just happened to show up in the frame, kind of like right here was the stuffed animal walrus. Well, that guy, I'm going to forever remember that person by their stuffed animal walrus. I mean, it would be as if he showed up to the office with that, right? And so now this backdrop and how it enables us to do things like communicate or even go to interviews really has changed. It's a game changer. And I'd like, Björn, for you to talk a little bit about some of the applications for what we're seeing right here, right now being demonstrated, potentially in our field and others that you might see.
Yeah, cool. I have to go back in time to give you a proper answer on that, because I mean, I started out in the broadcast industry where we first of all did traditional graphics, animation, and whatnot. Of course, a lot of commercials and that kind of stuff. But later down the line, when the newscast in Norway wanted to kind of put them on the map compared to America at that time, which had like the grand, amazing big studios, we couldn't afford to do that in Norway. So a company called VisRT raised up, and they realized that with the use of green screen and virtual graphics, they could actually create those huge American amazing news, weather, and so on. And suddenly a Norwegian telly was the most award-winning broadcast in the world, because they changed the status quo on how you could actually extend the real world with a virtual world. And also the fact that down the line we suddenly became more like virtual engineers than just like designers, which is kind of crazy for me to say, because I have no education whatsoever. And also compared to you, Yan, which, I mean, you are an architect and you have that education, that background, but based on the fact that we suddenly got questions like, how can we use this for live entertainment, sports? We did the first ever game show where we had, we created 6 different amazing worlds that looked like something out of a Disney or Avatar movie, where people could participate and do really challenging and fun tasks, as well as people at home could be a part of it, playing the same games on their mobile devices and whatnot. So we are seeing right now that, I mean, we used to do only broadcast, but we are now doing, we're using this real-time technology as a tool to extend all kind of fields, like sports, like music. We actually were the ones that did the first ever live virtual concert with an artist called Ania, which Epic Games actually loved and have started to do a lot more of, where, I mean, industries are meeting somehow in this real time, this virtual, this immersive world. So just the fact that we are today talking here in the first comedy show studio, and we're using this as a new way to communicate, it's just limitless of how you can use it. And within your world, Yan, where you can actually use the tools you already normally use, like CAD and 3D Studio Max and whatnot, and then bring that on the table and show the clients and visualize in new ways with both VR, AR. For example, right now, I could have been talking about this new amazing building I made, and then I could tell the story while you guys are discussing it with me and giving me feedback on it, and we could have graphic in front of me coming up, showing different point of views or elements or whatnot. So it is really exciting, and the fact that I don't look at this as technology, really. I look at it as a really amazing tool where your imagination is not the limit anymore.
You know, it strikes me that one of the things that you did was figure out a way to break us out of this kind of Brady Bunch universe where we're all stuck in a square. We've sort of like merged the squares. And in terms of the limited real estate that we have to make a presentation, this seems like such a much more effective use of that real estate. You know, and so when I think about going to an interview or pitching, you know, the power of this tool is actually really exciting. Norah, did you have a question?
Yes, so we got a question from our friend, the glue that brought us all together, David Sheldon. He has a question. He says, so we may have a back to human stage before going Fellmudde. So what would that look like, and how can we transition from the flatland to a dimensional humanity? So it's the transition between post-COVID to the future, basically.
Can I jump in? Yeah, yes, I was just going to jump in also because David's follow-up question I see also, which is about what actually is Björn sitting in or standing in, and the space that he's in, which would be really nice to sort of pull the covers off behind and say, this is what it really looks like. But let's address both, Björn, first. So how do you see transitioning from the flatland back to dimensional humanity during the recovery stage? So I think the operative word here is recovery. And what does recovery mean? Are we aiming back to new now or the old now? And that's the question I think everybody's asking. I think there's a lot of empathy and compassion moving forward, I hope. I see what's happening here. This is great. You see the picture that's going to come up, if you can see it already, with where Björn is actually really standing, David. And this was a snapshot before we went live. So this is it. But by the way, this is actually answering your question. I asked Björn, do you behave different or feel different standing in your green screen to when you actually see the actual set? And when you are in the set on the monitor, do you feel different? So Björn, why don't you answer that?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, a lot of people will kind of think that being on a green screen feels kind of strange. But for me, it feels like actually going onto a stage. Because I see I see myself interact with you guys. So if I were some kind of musical performer or whatnot, and when we did the first ever virtual concert with a brilliant artist in Norway called Ania, she said the same. She said, like, when I went into that environment, I was not on a green screen. I was truly there, and I was even beyond that, because I could use my imagination and I could feel the vibes of that. And suddenly I could be a part of something that not a lot of people have done either, which also is quite exciting. I lost my screen here for a second. Sorry. This is live, and this is new technology and never done before. But in general, I would say, like, yeah, I feel a big difference compared to Kathleen sitting home in front of our computer right now.
Yeah.
Well, Yan, one of the things we did talk about is from where we are today and how this productizes, and what are those potential products, and how do you get just the average person who is not necessarily skilled and doesn't have this grammar yet until 25 years when we'll all have this grammar. But how do you have the average person engage? It feels like a full production. But what we were talking about for the AEC industry, and can I just say AEC, is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
So we were looking at virtual sets as one product, and what does it take just to get to virtual sets? And what's the purpose of using a virtual set in a 2D screen versus using VR as a virtual set? So what's the use case for both of those? Also, Bjorn hasn't shown, but he might be able to. I don't know. I don't know if you can, Bjorn. I don't think so. What it's like to create an AR presentation inside a 2D screen. So if Bjorn had a map of Norway and was able to show you on a 2D screen walking around that map and points to areas of the map, and then it comes up full screen, that's a different product and a different use case. And then thirdly, we talked about green screens at home being the next new thing. Everybody's going to have a green screen home kit. But that's not necessarily true. There's some big advancements in that area. And Bjorn, you can talk to what Norway is, once again, leading the charge on how green screens at home aren't necessarily needed and how fast this train is moving. I don't know, Bjorn, if you want to jump in on that or not.
Yeah, we just have a technical issue. I need to move for a second here.
Well, it's okay. I think, I kind of wanted a couple of lean-ins there. One of the things to both respond to what you're saying and David's question, we're going to go back into a place where we're not fully back. It's not going to be the same situation that we were in before. So we're going to be part-time in the office, part-time at home. And I think that's a really important transition period, actually, because what's going to happen is mentally, we're going to get into a place where we accept the interactions that we're having at home as just as valid as the ones that we're having in the office or out, when we go out of our homes and have interactions in person. And that's actually really key to transitioning into a kind of virtual interacting, having meaningful interactions in a virtual realm, because perceptually we need to be able to say, okay, that's not a fake half interaction that I have over here that isn't the same as the kind of interactions I have when I'm in person. I think as we go back and forth more and more and more, we realize that they have a lot of meaning and value, and it's just a matter of time and really technology that will kind of support better interpersonal exchanges. How about you, Bjorn? Did you have anything to say about that?
To be honest, my sound disappeared for a second. The funny thing about this this happening today is that our biggest challenge is not our virtual environment and whatnot, which it should be, but it's actually Zoom. We had to kind of hack Zoom to be able to do this because Zoom is not made for this. So you have to repeat the question, or maybe Kathleen can jump in there.
Well, it was just about green screen technology and the ability of the kind of use case for what we're doing here today. So, progress is everyone going to have a green screen at their house and some ability to match move and match camera angles and do that kind of thing? Where do you see this technology going when it becomes packaged?
I think me and Kathleen could go for 2 hours on just that. but for me, myself, I mean, the studio we have right here now was never meant to be built for this kind of stuff. It was only meant for my guys to be able to check out the graphics they've done, and that's it. This is the smallest green screen ever, but we can actually live produce TV shows that looks way better than any I'm not gonna F-bomb today. Any American TV channel. We are actually launching quite soon. You guys should watch the Weather Channel, because they will be the first channel on the planet that go 100% virtual, and it's so amazing. The Weather Channel should have been awarded everything on this planet, because they are pushing the boundary for how you can use virtual technology and broadcast and storytelling in an amazing way. For example, this meeting right now, we could have had you guys on a green screen, and you guys will be standing next to us, but we didn't have time to put up the proper lights and whatnot to actually do that. We could also, there is a new company in Norway that is working on new camera technology that can actually create holograms without, you don't need to have any green screen or whatever, and we can project that into the virtual world, either as in this environment right here, or if we were to have a VR glass hologram, whatever, conversation. So, and you could also use LED. We could actually also set up a big screen behind you guys, and then we could have a tracked camera. So whenever the camera moves, the background have a parallax, so it moves together with that and gives the depth and feel. And I mean, there is me and Kathleen can probably talk about this for hours and hours, but we are today just showing you a tiny little leap, which will just go bananas in the future. But at the very moment, I think that the easiest thing to do would be actually having you guys on a simple green screen, and you will be standing next to us. We could not move the camera around you guys, but we would have you as like posters here, so I could move around you guys, and we could also move the camera back and forth, so it will look like you are a part of this big room.
Would be like an animated cardboard cutout kind of thing.
Exactly.
By the way, Bjorn, I don't think I told you this, but I'm a judge for the Emmys. So now that you just mentioned the Weather Channel, I'm just saying, you know, maybe I could just, you know, throw in a vote or two.
So I think it's time. This is a good moment to sort of start to transition into the future a little bit. Kathleen, I wanted to ask you about this one moment that happened a couple of years ago, and sort of let's project out from there. Drake, the musician, meets Ninja, the world famous gamer, in Fortnite, and draws 630,000 viewers, concurrent viewers. Yeah. We've all heard of Twitch. We've heard of esports. We've heard of super popular games like Minecraft and Fortnite. These are major audiences. I think it'd be good for us to start just by maybe you having explain to all of us what an MMO actually is. And why are people engaging in them? Why are they playing them? Are they playing for rewards, or are they playing for experience now and actual social interaction? Yeah.
But there's a lot there to unpack. So my best friend's daughter is 15, and I said, so you're in lockdown. What are you busy doing? Because she hasn't come out of the house for like 2 months. And okay, maybe 30 days. And she said, I'm in Minecraft. And I said, you were in Minecraft when you were 8. She said, Minecraft has had a resurgence. I said, so you're not in Fortnite? Is this you being 15 and too scared of Fortnite and your parents aren't letting you there? Or is this Minecraft has a new comeback tour? And she said, no, it has a whole new comeback tour because everybody that played Minecraft at 8 now wants to come back in the space to socialize. So it's the power of the platform. So there's a lot here. There's a lot around persistent worlds, which is a conversation we haven't even begun to tap. Massive multiplayer online, MMO, which was, you know, back when we were creating Medal of Honor, massive multiplayer was where we were aiming for. So that was the next big dangling carrot. So now, whether you are a first-person shooter game, which I hate to use that as an analogy because that's where so much money has been put, wrongfully, in my opinion, just being a humanist, because it's Pavlovian. There's also role-playing games, which is not about time, and it's not about annihilation, and it's not about this dark dystopia, but it's really about getting to know people. And the RPG part, so you'll see MMORPG, MMO FPS, massive multiplayer online first-person shooter, massive multiplayer online role-playing game. Those behaviors, those psychologies that have sort of grown outside of the gaming world now as philosophies, are being met with a lot of pushback because you can see what's happened to society based on a lot of what's happened in games. And that's not a good model to mimic. So the question I always say is, are we fixing all these systemic world problems going into these new metaverse spaces? Are we taking what that doesn't work and now having a chance to go fix it in these new spaces? Because we can. This is the time to be the most creative in our future we ever could be. Or are we just going to carry over all these old models and be humans and, you know, not ask of more potential of all of us? So I look at this really from a 10,000 foot view and say, okay, how do you back into this? And Bjorn, you know, you're making these worlds, and I'm looking at the people that are in these worlds and looking what the output is on the other side. And I do think, I don't know why I think this. I think Oslo, you guys were online from birth as digital natives before we were. Maybe that's true or not true, Bjorn. I think it is true for you.
Of course.
So maybe that's an appropriate question too for Bjorn, like how that looks culturally. you know, from your view versus how America's sold these summer big blockbusters and scripts and stories of the way we're supposed to behave in these worlds, because it's fantasy and it's not reality, but it's reality now.
It is reality. But before I go into that, I just want to say something to Yan, that we had this funny discussion the other day regards that technology is moving and times are changing. And I kind of said to Yan the other day, because we have been doing this amazing project with the Weather Channel, where we are constructing and creating this amazing virtual brand for the Weather Channel. And I said to Yan, like, but I don't have the background to actually do this. You do. And we were kind of discussing this a bit back and forth, which is quite interesting in regards to the fact that this tool is something really new that not a lot of people have really touched into, which have been able to give us, as a small company from Norway, a really, really unique position. So Yan, you were saying, I don't know if you want to add something to that, but I think that is quite interesting.
I think I got on your case about the set. I think because it was, you had like a beam, a wood beam, it was curved and it was mapped like a floor. And, you know, my eye picked up on it right away. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah,
but just the fact that, I mean, with this technology, I mean, for example, you guys can use this more as a 360 product, where I mean, as I said earlier today, you can go from having the sketch and the presentation to becoming this kind of presentation or discussion, and like when we did this amazing the Weather Channel project, we could actually discuss what we did in a totally new way. We're putting on VR helmets, and then I could walk around and I can pinpoint things and see things in totally different ways that I've ever been able to do. And even though I've been trying out VR for so many years, that was like a really mesmerizing moment for me, where I could actually be a creator inside before it was even built.
Absolutely.
So I think this is a good time for a question, Yan, we got from the audience. They're saying, how can this be used for communication with clients, meetings, and presentations? So from your perspective in the architecture industry, how can we tap into this, and how can we use this for our advantage?
Yeah, you know, we tried to touch on that a little bit earlier when we were talking about, you know, how we might use this for an interview, for instance, right? Right now, our interviews are challenged by the fact that we're conducting them from within a Zoom meeting. They probably will be going forward, right? You know, even when we do come back to the office, social distancing measures will likely stay in place. People will be wearing masks. That's going to present its own challenge to an interview panel, right? And it's important that people see your face. So all of this technology, being able to break out of the Brady Bunch boxes and use the real estate of the screen is going to be a competitive advantage for us. I think that's one example. The other thing that I hope we can talk about a little bit later on is who's actually making the backgrounds, because it used to be a set designer, right? But now we're walking around and having experiences in there, and I can change my camera angle, right? A set designer designs for one shot or two shots or three shots, and the other side of it is nothing. There's nothing there. So we're talking about a hybrid between architecture and set design, and I'm really interested in who it is that's going to go in and start to create these places that we're engaging in. Kathleen, did you have anything else to say? You wanted to add something a minute ago.
I have a million things to add. It keeps like going right, you know. I want to stop the train right now. What I wanted to ask you, Yan, and push back is, can you walk us through how you think an interview would go in this space right now? Do you imagine a boardroom setup in the foyer of this comedy set? Like, how do you imagine an interview so Björn can begin to understand and I can begin to understand what you guys inherently know? And again, are you carrying over that same old model, because this offers very different opportunities? And is there a need to do strategic thinking around that?
Yeah, no, I'm imagining the first interview where we tried this, which would be a mimicry of what interviews used to look like. And then the 10th interview where we're like, why do we need the boardroom setting? Why do we need the stage? Why aren't we in the project right now, walking around, touring, and experiencing it together. So I think it's going to very quickly evolve. I think that those who get there first will differentiate themselves. They're going to have a much more engaging and memorable presentation, and they're going to be able to present context, material in a richer way, right? I'll be able to hold the model. I'll be able to point to different things on the model. That's a lot easier than a flat image or PowerPoint. And that's something that, we both saw Björn was doing the other day in his virtual studio. He was holding a model and kind of pointing to, I think it was for the Weather Channel. And so that's not something that's in the distant future. That's something that's around right now. And it's just a matter of when these tools become accessible to end users like us.
So there's a good question here for Kathleen and Björn from David. David is asking Björn, how long does it take to build a set to be proud of, like a full built set? And then Kathleen, a follow-up for you. How do you see these sets working for firms like us? Is it subscription based? Is it a kit of parts? Like, where do you see this going?
Yeah, really good questions. Björn, you want to go?
Was it Dave that asked the question?
David, yeah.
David, I will kick that question back to him. How long does it take to make a building that he's proud of?
Oh God, we're going to be in this relationship for 20 years.
No, but I mean, as David probably know, it totally depends on the framework there is time, there is budget, there is goals, there is also clients that have imagination, there is clients without imagination. But normally we work within the broadcast industry, so our deadlines are quite crazy. Sleep is something I've never seen or heard about. So we tend to do projects between, like for example, when we aired the first ever virtual comedy show, we spent 2 weeks to create the entire thing, which normally, if you were kind of creating a physical set on that time, I think someone would be dying while they were building that. We can create quite something in 2 weeks. We can create better stuff in 1 month, but the biggest projects we do is actually half a year projects.
So what I'll riff on, David, is know your audience, right? I have been fortunate enough to be in this industry long enough to have some wisdom on the software development side to have gone from waterfall method to agile. And what that translates to is, I think, you guys building the 100-year-old educational facility versus building something very modular that has to be adapted to the current, climate. So in that case, a couple things. Number one, do you think your clients are ready for iterative, continuous iteration and continuous development, where you create a virtual space that might not be 100%, but it has the integrations that you need? And then you build on that and you grow a persistent world together. Like, imagine you walk into Perkins Will and there are many, it's a la carte. There's many ways in which we can engage with you. So I could, productize a menu, like a Chinese menu. I don't say that, in any degrading way, meaning just a la carte, and pick and choose what I think might best serve this client. Are we waiting to create the entire repertoire? Or can we just jump in and start saying, with baby steps, let's just try this and see how this begins to change the philosophy of how we think as an organization. And let's map out a strategic plan over 5 years. Here's where we want to go. Because people have to digest this. This is a big lift. And I got to say one more time, if it wasn't for COVID, there wasn't ever, and I could imagine a moment in time where everybody stopped and now are looking at virtual with a whole new lens and saying it's a have to. This is not maybe I want to. This is now a have to. So I'm imagining this is not the first rodeo. This is going to happen more and more now. So I'm happy to have this conversation with you, David. You know this.
And also the fact, David, that you guys, when you construct something, it can rust and it can have, or you can have an earthquake or whatever. My constructions never dies. They are in the cloud.
So let's talk about the construction, actually, because I still am sort of fascinated about our profession's role in that construction, because construction is usually our business, right? So this is kind of a step in that direction. Question to you, Kathleen, on virtual economies. We know that CP Games hired a real-world economist to analyze and assist with creating the virtual economy in the game EVE Online. In that game, we see transactions being made $9,000 for a virtual ship, $100,000 to own a club in Entropia. So people have real value and are trading real dollars, even though they're not supposed to be. You know, there's gray markets, but it's actually happening. So that's kind of idea of we're translating things in the real world into the virtual world, kind of bringing our baggage with us and all that. Can you tell us a little bit about virtual economies and how you see all that tying into where we're going?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a step back in time and say when virtual economies really hit was with World of Warcraft. When World of Warcraft hit, they were generating more revenue than I think they had said Vietnam and Cambodia combined at the time. That was their measurement. And then they introduced gold farming, a bunch of people in rooms that were jacking up prices inside Warcraft so they could, you know, then disturb the economies. So, you know, there's the black hat side of this, and then there's the ethical side of this conversation. And then include blockchain, where this decentralized register makes everybody accountable and holds a big mirror up to people about these virtual economies. It's a real current topic around digital sovereignty, my identity, and who's using my identity and profiting off of that. So I come into this conversation via virtual humans, virtual identity, and where this world is going to land. So again, I'm going to chalk this up to the developer years of 25 years means, this is my view. I think I could be wrong, but this is the way I see it. Because for the last 25 years, everybody's been telling me we're in the developer years. So I finally got wind here and said, oh, okay, so we're never leaving the developer years. So who do you want to be? Do you want to be the richest man in the room? Do you want to have the most memorable brand? Do you want to be the one associated with the highest of ethics? Who do you want to be in this? Because everybody's chasing the most money. That's obvious. But in this new world that we're walking into, I say it's like you're learning martial arts. Every so many years, we're leveling up with a different color on your belt, where ultimately, like I said, we end up being a black belt in 25 years. We all have a shared understanding. We've worked it out. We've iterated enough. We see what works and doesn't work, and we all come to some shared understanding that feels right. So one thing I mentioned to you was the protopian era. So I don't know if I mentioned this in the offices of Perkins Will, but it's a phrase that I heard last year and I really liked it. You know, we're not in the dystopia anymore because sci-fi is our reality and we're facing it. And we're not pretending in a utopia that this is all idyllic and perfect and fantasy, even though, you know, there's no reason not to go to Burning Man every year, even though they canceled it, just to play out your utopian ideals of who you want to be in a fantasy world until resources deplete. Then it becomes feast and famine. But this idea of a protopian era is called the becoming era. We're in the era of becoming. So as long as we subscribe to the journey and say we're in this for the journey, who do we want to be in this space? You know, virtual economy and hiring an economist, of course. Are we bringing over old models or are we going to challenge them?
So with that, we've talked about economies. We've talked about experience, reward, social interaction. Aside from shelter, isn't that an architectural program? I mean, I feels like I'm trying to understand the difference between creating a virtual world where people interact and have all of these exchanges and a physical one. And so I'm curious, who is designing the sets of the world that people occupy? It's not architects. Is it a specialty? How does it differ from architecture?
Bjorn, do you want to take this? And then I have something to say about it.
My answer would definitely be like, it should be you guys together with geeks like us. Because
we're geeks too, by the way, so it's a good combination.
Yeah, but you guys are
you
guys are educated geeks.
Come on, Norah, you're there with me.
Because I think that is the fun thing, and that's also what I love about this conversation. The fact that I mean, a computer company or a design company that do computer graphics can meet an architectural company, and suddenly you guys can help us doing virtual sets or virtual environments or new experiences, and we can help you on the other side. I mean, that is freaking cool.
It's really cool.
I will say that I have continuous banter with a woman. I'm not gonna out her because of who she is at Disney, but she is so good, and she's been there for so long on the Imagineering team as a built environment experiential storyteller. And I challenge her on immersive environments and immersive storytelling. And she says, what's the difference? It's humans being human. And what she does really well after 20 some odd years at Disney, because Disney is aiming for happiness. I had a conversation with Alexa's personality team at Amazon. And if you didn't know this, Alexa has a personality team. And on that personality team, the question is, who does Alexa need to be? Alexa's job is never to make you wrong, and she gets yelled at and abused all day long. Alexa's job is to bring delight. Disney's job is to bring happiness. When we start looking at these big anchors and say everything points to that at all times, how do we begin to think about these built environment experiential storytelling moments and then immersive storytelling moments? So we banter back and forth, and it's super fun because she says it's all the same thing. And I say, no, it's not. Here's an opportunity to be different. Here's a platform and a catalyst to be different. We don't know what we don't know yet. What if you walked through one of these environments in real time on Björn's set, and your project interview team, each person was not able to see each other. One was in the bathroom, another was in another area of an office, someone else was in the foyer, and you're executing a project interview in real time, thinking about this completely different with a story in mind. So it's experiential. How would the decisions be any different at the end of, if the job of the interview is to seal the deal and close the deal, what do you need to be to do that? And it really is understand your audience. They need to be.
I don't have the terms, but when I bought my apartment, I was so disappointed by because they gathered a big group of people, they presented the project, and it was like a really boring PowerPoint presentation. So after that one, I didn't want to even buy that apartment. So I kind of imagined that, I mean, if that same presentation was done with, for example, a green screen like this, where they could talk about like, okay, Björn, you're going to buy this apartment, and you're going to, when you enter this apartment at 12 o'clock, the light will come in like this, and the view will be like this, and so you can feel it. And I think that, I mean, what I experienced by that meeting or that presentation is that they are really great architecture company that have built like the biggest tree tower in Norway, or not in the world. So it actually was awarded really big time, but they couldn't tell the story. They didn't tell the story. And what we do as a company is that we tell stories all the time. If it's commercial, if it's opening titles, if it's a TV show, we tell a story. And you guys are also telling stories. I mean, I'm living in a story. I'm living in a building made by you guys. But it's just also about, I mean, I think that if we look at this virtual environment or this virtual world or whatever you call it, it's not about the virtual itself. It's just an amazing tool to tell stories in new ways, just like back in the days when we were sitting out having a campfire, sitting in this beautiful environment and telling stories. It's a big difference about telling a story in the desert with a campfire, sitting around and feeling the environment, compared to just telling a story from video to video, sitting home in Corona times. But when you can have, I mean, we are so visuals. We're moving every day in a three-dimensional world, and that's how we live, feel, and kind of explore this world. So I think that no matter what kind of tools you use, it is the story combined with the feeling, which is actually what we're doing today here. As you see in some of the clips here, it's like you can be a part of something that doesn't exist, but you get the same feeling, even though we are not sitting around a campfire right now, but we will have a way better feeling and understanding of this since it's in this visual universe. And I can actually now based on the fact that we are too close, I can get rid of you guys like this. And
what are you doing? What are you doing to us?
sorry, guys, because I wanted one minute. I wanted 1 minute of
Pushed you
fame.
guys away.
I wanted 1 minute of fame, and that is like I would love to work with people like Yan. I mean, me and Kathleen are people that normally work together and create really, really exciting, cool stuff.
I have some thoughts.
I'm
Bjorn.
gonna bring you back. Oh, what happened? Oh fuck. Sorry. We are in Norway, so sorry. Bring them back, guys.
Uh-oh, the animals are...
The animals, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I mean, this is live, so we never know what happens.
I have a couple thoughts I want to riff off for a second around this. I think it's really important.
Let's do it.
A big theme park in Europe who I've been working with obviously is, you know, in a dark place right now. And long before COVID, I had suggested that you should be able to have your digital twin in the park. When you leave the park, your relationship with the park stays because your twin lives in a persistent world inside the park in perpetuity forever. And your twin can, and persistent worlds mean that the world is going on whether you're in it or you're not. So things are happening. So there are games where your town gets burned down because you weren't there and online and playing. So persistent worlds have a mind of their own. So when we talk about all of these sets that are still very architected, real-time data, persistent data, as well as storytelling a character that lives in this world, whether you're there or not. And let's say that's an extension of you, and you can check in, or this character says, hey, Kathleen, this is what I've been doing at the park while you haven't been here. There's a vehicle and a way for me physically to come back to the park because I tell my mom, I want to go back to the park. My twin has been going on all these new rides I heard about. I mean, it's a marketing genius tool, but in essence, it also can help expand these persistent spaces and start challenging and doing user research and asking people, is this something that you would be into? And doing crowdsourced user research based on a new build. So maybe a new area of the park or such. So real-time data and persistent worlds and AI and machine learning are ways that this is going to level up that we're not even prepared for. These environments will know us before we're there.
And this,
so, Bjorn.
And this is
yeah,
why...
actually, Kathleen, since you're saying this, Miguel sent a question and he's saying the metaverse is a great space, but how are we, the people, handling that? So I think what you said kind of covers that, but do you have any additional thoughts of...
Yeah, before I answer that, Bjorn, I know you were going to talk about real-time data.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that's why I love you. Because you are, I mean, you are definitely like someone that thinks 2,000 years ahead of anyone else. But it's because that is also the thing. It's like it is virtual, but I mean with data from all kind of. I mean, for example, we are working with a company in Norway called Cognite. I mean, they are amazing because they actually use real sensor data on their oil rigs, on their platforms, and then they create digital twins of that platform, and then they use and then then they use that data to visualize and give the building. I mean, when you see that building, you can be in front of it, and you can actually navigate around it, and you can see visually where there is something wrong, and then you can say like, I want to replace that thing. And then AI can go in and suggest and give you a lot of suggestions and whatnot. And we had this idea for a Norwegian building company where we said, like, what about like when I buy the apartment, you already have built it virtually. So when I've bought it, why not use sensor data in that apartment so I can keep the virtual twin? So that means whenever I want to buy a new sofa, I don't go around and measure. I use that data and I replace it, and then IKEA is connected to my app, and then suddenly I have new furniture on my home next day. And then again, you can use that data if, for example, you have an apartment where there was a leak or something that is also data driven. So that means when you sell your apartment, you give the history and the life of your apartment in a digital twin, and then you don't, whenever there is a problem again, you can say like, guys, you sold it with an error. I can see that was something that happened in a digital twin 3 years ago.
Well, Bjorn, let me just say, not only do I love this idea, but Soul Machines out of New Zealand is doing this with actual digital humans. They're creating a digital gene pool. And that digital gene pool, if you can wrap your head around that, which is like a scene out of Gattaca and Real Player One combined in Black Mirror added on top. This idea that this real-time data stays with you and your house and your things that are yours and grow with you, and it's seamless. That's to me, that's the 25-year mark.
It takes fear of missing out to a whole new level, right? You're missing out on your own virtual life. So, Kathleen, you've talked a lot about the next 25 years and how that's going to change, and I'd like for you to elaborate a little bit on that. Like, how do you see? Are we jacked in? Is everyone jacked in all the time? Are we just saying that society values the experiences that they have virtually equal to the ones that they have in the physical world? So I guess just paint us a picture on what it looks like in 25 years when we've fully made this transition.
Yes, I kind of want to, and I kind of don't, because I don't pretend to be a rainmaker who's creating an image. I think this is a crowdsourced experience. I think this is as unique as asking humanity to pull from their best and giving people permission to come to the table. This is, like what we've seen creatively in COVID is just a blip on the radar of what's possible from humanity instead of dictating it. So I'm from the, open source, crowdsourced, let people define this creative, give them the platform to let them define the creativity here. So I don't know if I can paint that so much. I did see, and this isn't derailing your question, I just saw a question come up that I thought was really interesting. And Norah, I don't know if you're pointing to it too, around education and schools, which I think Bjorn might be able to weigh in on, and I can weigh in on that too, and maybe Yan. But I love your question, but I think this is a tactical one that's important.
Yeah, let's all go there together. If this plays out, how does that translate to VR being a social equalizer when it comes to education or the school experience?
Yeah, what exactly was the question?
So the question says, a lot of neighborhoods have their facilities are not that great for schools. So how can PW, MYREZE, Kathleen, everyone combined can build a virtual school before fall so that the school districts can use it for virtual classrooms post COVID-19?
We've already done it here today.
I was like, what month are we in? Bjorn, show and tell. What do you got?
We're almost May.
June, July, August, September, 4 months, Bjorn.
Yeah, and we can definitely do that. And for me, that would be amazing based on the fact that I went to the worst school on the planet and I really hated it. And I think that just based on this times, I've seen so many kids being really, curious about this new way of learning. And I mean, in one way, schools all around the world have actually done a leap into where kids are learning today. Most kids are sitting, everything I know is based on YouTube. Nothing else. Forget about my school. And I think that this way of communication, kids today are spending most of their time on some kind of device anyway, playing games. They navigate those games so amazingly. So if schools could do more like this, be more interactive, where, at this very moment, I could be the teacher, and then we could have an interview here, and we could have a quiz where graphics comes up, and we can have people home pushing buttons, and then it activates something here. We could talk about the background of the pigs, and actually show them. And there is, I think Epic Games are one of the best teachers on the planet right now.
Well, we can argue the biggest problem in the public school system, which is Epic Games being the BMW and Unity being accessible to everybody else. And that's not even the school system. The school system's got such a locked-in, secure system that often fails on being able to learn up in the United States. I want to talk about 3 points. Bjorn, I don't want to cut you off if you have more to say, but I have 3 points about this. The first point is back in 1996 at DreamWorks, I helped LAUSD in the Teach the Teachers program. And back then, just in world building for video games, it was really to help have the teachers not feel like they were being overrun by the kids in the class and giving them a sense of seniority, because they were limiting the kids' chances to be creative just to keep control in the classroom, because it was the teachers that were the bottleneck. So that's the first problem, is getting through to the teachers that often aren't digital natives, or now we're growing up with more digital natives, which is, it's got to start with the teachers. Obviously, it's got to start with districts and how difficult districts are. So that's my first thought, is how do we support the teachers in this environment? The second thing is, in Obama's last term, he left $1 million on the table, unencumbered funds for people to solve education sim, the EdSim challenge. So I teamed up with the Rossier School of USC, USC's Rossier School of Education, to create a platform we called Vraptitude, VR aptitude. And what that did is, between 11th grade in education and your second year of college is, by research, the biggest drop-off rate of where you're sort of headed in life. So we wanted to help close that gap and work with career counselors. So the idea was, if I could get a career counselor to understand virtual reality and put virtual reality gear on a kid and do job simulation training, we could first ask these kids their aptitude, what they think they're good at, and we could dispel that myth in VR if they are really good at it. And it doesn't mean you have to be a good gamer. And two, give kids the opportunity to see what they might be good at they didn't know. They might get into dentistry because the interface design was done so well and they like it. So the next phase of Vraptitude was to match it with 360 college tours, or a day in the life of, for any socioeconomically challenged child that couldn't get access. So we're giving them aptitude training and access. So this was a sure win, right? This is like a no-brainer. And we thought for sure we were winners. We weren't. The winners were actual ER simulation, which is probably more necessary right now, but that's who won. So those were two areas of how we had to deal in immersive tech in education. And the last thing I will say is, the team that I joined, HoloRide, this Audi Innovation Lab, what they have done is GPS tracked everything that you do in a car to the real world. So if you're braking in the real world, you're braking inside the car. If you're traveling across the country, the data that gets pulled in as an education tool for kids in a car, and this also includes diversity and inclusion for people that may not be able to get somewhere, but they have accessibility with their own car, is that you could drive around and collect information in education. So the point being is, Bjorn, while you're creating a virtual set, again, a location, the education part of this goes beyond the four walls.
Definitely.
So that's
what I'd like to lean in here too, because I'm raising, my wife and I are raising a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old right now. And it's just been incredible, the kind of experiences that they're having with this technology at their fingertips. You know, I'm from the generation that, you know, and even in our parental group, we're still being told, like, screen time, bad, get the screen out of their face. But what I'm finding is, actually, when they have options, interesting, engaging options. For example, our 4-year-old loves PBS Kids. That they actually will go to those choices, and they willingly choose to engage and learn. He's got this amazing vocabulary. He knows stuff about animals I don't even know. He's 4. You know, so amazing. It just shows you the possibilities of when these tools are put to good use. You know, it could be the magic school bus for every kid every single day. And it's just a matter of making sure that there's equal access, and we have fewer and fewer excuses as to why we can't do that for everyone.
And the cool thing about that is that I think that imagination amongst kids are so important for triggering or being able to learn new things. Just a really stupid example, but when I was a kid, my mom and my dad were saying always, like, or my entire family said, like, you have to go outside. You cannot sit inside every single day and play Nintendo. And one day, me and my best friend went outside, and we were like, do we need to go out and play with the other kids? And then we actually went out in the garden, and we imagined playing Super Mario outside in a virtual world. And that was, I mean, still remember it, but it was just so much fun, because we actually imagined creating this immersive world, which I'm actually doing today when we were 9 years old. And it's just like, I don't think, I mean, a tutor or a teacher needs to be a teacher, But at the same way, this is just an additional tool to ignite new ways of thinking, new ways of learning, and also the fact that the reason this is more engaging to watch than having me sitting home in my bathroom doing a video call is that this virtual environment just gives you something more intriguing. It is imagination. So there is something there, which I just love.
So I think we have time for one more question. We got a question from Muna, and she's saying, many media outlets are talking about Zoom fatigue and like how can we mitigate the effects of this over-processing of information without completely abandoning virtual conferencing?
You know, I was just talking about this earlier today with Phil, actually. And we were saying, what exactly is Zoom fatigue? I've read that it's, you know, you're seeing yourself on camera 24/7. I have a different experience personally. I think the fatigue is really from multitasking. We now have the ability to just constantly have two things going at the same time. Even right now, when I'm doing this whole thing, I have my email up and I'm tracking that, and I'm watching the YouTube video and I'm watching all the questions. My brain is tracking three things at once. When you compare that to the moment before we got into the pandemic, when I was just sitting at a table having a conversation with somebody most of the day, that's a whole different place for my brain to be. And we know that evolution has not made us the best multitaskers. There's plenty of science that shows that. So I actually think that's what Zoom fatigue is. It's not necessarily poor Zoom, which is just catching a really bad rap these days.
Yeah, I think they just tied in with Oracle this week to carry the load. Bjorn, do you have an opinion on Zoom fatigue?
No, but I know that whoever owns Zoom should call us after this one. And they will get
mine
better
is
repetition.
I open the screen, close the screen, I open the screen, close the screen all day long. And one of the things that I think is interesting is the question that was brought up around your virtual background, using it, not using it, and what does that mean as far as level setting equality in the workplace and from home, and also at a moment in time where there's total authenticity and transparency needed from everybody, because we're all in a moment of humility. And, you know, how does that change as we move forward? So these are sort of gems that I look at and I pull and I say, okay, so here's the good in this. Here's the good, and here's how we carry that forward. So I don't know if we answered the question around Zoom fatigue, but you know, within 30 days or 45 days, everybody in the immersive industry is hair on fire, trying to look at their way into this conversation. And it's giving all kinds of shape. I don't think the shape is baked yet, but it's what's needed to push us over, you know, the fulcrum point.
Zoom gloom.
Well, it's like your kids, let them be bored. Let's not be helicopter parents. Let's not give all of us all these tools, bells and whistles. Let's be bored for a second and let's figure this out, and let people genuinely come to the table and put on their best, you know, outfit if they want that day. They could be anybody. Now you don't have to be yourself because it's all kind of a dream.
Well, with the dream mark, anyone has ending remarks? Yan?
We have any more questions?
There are some questions.
We're right at the end. It looks like we've got 6 or so more minutes. I want to take some moderator privilege and ask Bjorn a couple of questions.
Do it.
Bjorn, do you know what that is in my background over there? I put that in especially for you. How old are you? Did you play Nintendo, Super Nintendo when that guy was part of the console?
I can see a record player. Is it?
No, above the record player, there's a little robot.
Oh.
Wait, the logo's covering it.
Hold on.
Bring it back or bring it forward.
Oh my gosh.
This sucky thing right here. You know what that is?
No.
Okay, so the very first Super Nintendo, I don't even know. I think it was just regular Nintendo.
Yeah.
It came with this. It was like, you know, you had the duck hunt, you had the gun. Yeah. If you got the super package, you got the... Because they thought that if you were a kid playing video games, you obviously didn't have any friends back then.
Oh my
so you needed a companion, and this was the guy that you were going to play with. He actually can hold the controller right here, so you would put the controller in. But then you'd have to control him to control the controller. Wow. And it was just a terrible... They killed it with after season 1. So I just wanted to know if there's anyone else that recognized Rob the Robot.
No, but I should get my data glove or my data man out of the closet now that we're going there. and my Motorola brick phone from 1991. Okay.
That's amazing.
My museum of obsolescence is hiding behind.
I have one too. My friends all knock me about it. I have a whole
So
really
that's why
technology
my parents were so afraid that I had a big social problem, because I rather wanted to play Super Nintendo or Nintendo than hanging out with any kind of girls.
Bjorn, your time has come. You know this.
Bjorn, how hot is the princess in Super Mario Brothers? I mean, that was my girlfriend.
Oh my God.
The funny thing,
And
Peach.
cut.
Princess Peach.
no, and the funny thing is, I just proposed to my girlfriend, and she looks exactly like Princess Leia in
Peach?
Peach in Super Mario.
You're a lucky man.
So
Great.
yeah, this has been a really, really, really fun experience, guys. And
Yeah.
It has been, Bjorn. Thank you.
And thanks to the LAForward7 for setting this up. Really, really cool that you guys put this all together. And I hope there's more. I hope there's part 2. I hope we're seeing you guys and talking about this going forward.
yeah, and
this is only the beginning.
and
thank you all
next time
for joining.
I'm gonna
Thank you, Kathleen, for connecting us with Bjorn. Thank you, Yan, for moderating this and taking a chunk of your time with calls pre-panel.
All good. Made some
Much
new
appreciated. Yeah.
thank you so
with
much.
that, I think thank you everyone for joining. And
Thank you,
how late
everybody.
is it? How late is it, Bjorn, in Norway?
Oh,
Are we gonna tell you good night?
it's extremely late. I mean,
Okay.
but in Norway, I mean, it's dark all the time, every single day of the year, so it doesn't matter.
Wow.
So that's why we're always inside and creating crazy, amazing graphics.
Bjorn,
with
I'll
that,
follow up with you. I'll follow up with you, Bjorn, with you, Norah, with you, Yan, and everybody who is out in the memisphere out there in the metaverse. Thank you. And
Thank you all.
we look forward to
And
chatting with you
fist
guys
bump,
You too.
Corona bomb.
Fist bump.
Thank you, everyone.
Fist bump
Oh, am I
somewhere.
in this?
I
or
think so. I don't know.
I'm just gonna do this. I don't know where I am.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Have
Thanks,
a great
everybody.
day and stay safe.
Bye.
Stay virtual.
Bye.
Don't meet any people.
A good story immerses the audience into a new world, leaving impacts and emotions. MYREZE merges creative thinking and new technologies to communicate innovation, forming new expressions. We inspire the audience. We are the future of storytelling.